It's recap time. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode blank of the Shower Podcast, the podcast where I'm in my shower and you do you. I'm your host, Chip, and these, together with the following episodes, I still haven't decided on the exact number, will be a bit of an experiment. So let me explain a bit what I want to do here. I've been playing around with this tool that I found online called Notebook LM by Google that lets you feed it with videos, texts, information from the internet, and it kind of gives you the chance to chat and extract information from these videos. Out of curiosity, since now we produced more than 80 videos, I was like, okay, let me try to feed my videos to this tool and see what comes out of it. Specifically, there is a very, very, very intriguing option of creating a sort of podcast out of the information that you send that analyzes, describes, and summarizes the info that it's present in those videos. And now, something that, it's normal because, everybody has their days and you might have to do your stuff. You might have lost or just were not necessarily interested in a specific episode. And what I want to do here, since that unfortunately I will also be out for a few days and I feel like I need a bit of a moment of inspiration, because again, if you have followed the last episodes, you'll understand why, but I need a bit of a fresh start. So I was like, why not use this opportunity to create this tool, give you the chance for a recap, and continue with my progress towards the 365 episodes. I think it's a fair, let's say, trade-off between me bringing actual content that inspires me and you being able to actually think back on the episodes that we did and make sure to maybe go and listen again to the original one, trying to get the insight you were looking for. I won't go any further with this intro. I just wanted to throw it out there. Hope you like it. We'll start from the start up to episode 82. So maybe up to episode 80. I will keep I'll see how to divide it. But here we are. Enjoy it. Hope you will like it. And see you at the next one.
Sometimes it's really cool to look back at a bunch of ideas all at once. Today, we're diving into a few episodes from Chip's Shower Podcast, episodes 26 to 30. And what we're really trying to do is see not only what each episode is about on its own, but also how they might connect,
Yeah, totally. When you look at these episodes together, you actually start to see some pretty interesting patterns in how Chip thinks about, just life in general. It goes beyond just those random shower thoughts, and it kind of gives you a glimpse into a bigger philosophy that he might have.
So episode 26, You're Not in Danger. This one was all about his snowboarding trip. And one thing that he talked about was just feeling more energized, which is always a good thing. But the main point was about pushing past that mental block. I think we all feel it sometimes, that hesitation to do something, even when we have the skills,
Right, exactly. And it wasn't even like he was suddenly doing these crazy tricks or anything. It was more about him just, changing his mindset. He was more willing to trust the skills that he already had and just really go for it. And I think that's a really valuable lesson for everyone, How often do we hold ourselves back, not because we actually can't do something, but because our brains are like, oh, what if this happens? Or what if I fail?
He had this really interesting story about slipping on some ice, and what was surprising was how calm he stayed. Instead of freaking out like most people probably would, he actually felt in control. And it really makes you think about how, that initial fear reaction, it's not always helpful, is it?
No, not at all. I think the takeaway here is that when you're faced with a challenge, try to focus on the things that you can actually control. So you're not so worried about all the what ifs and the potential negatives, You're more focused on actually engaging with the situation. Think about a time when you felt overwhelmed by something. What were the things that you could have controlled in that moment?
It reminds me of the analogy he used about driving a scooter in Rome. It's kind of chaotic by nature, right? But his point was that, instead of constantly worrying about getting into an accident, you should just focus on what you can do. Be a good driver, be aware of your surroundings, It's about taking charge in that present moment.
Yeah, and that idea of having agency, of taking control, that's something that comes up again later in the other episodes. So moving on to episode 27, Let It Go. This one started with him finding an old video of his first cat, Stella.
Yeah, this episode felt a lot more personal, a lot more about like introspection. The video obviously made him happy at first, but then it got him thinking about how much stuff we all keep, Not just physical things, but digital stuff too, like all those photos and videos that we never look at.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that he admits that he has trouble letting go of things too. He likes to give second chances, which I think a lot of people can relate to. It just shows how strong our attachments to the past can be,
Mhm.
whether it's people or experiences or even just, like you said, old files on our computers. So think about it. What are some things that you find hard to let go of, even though you probably should?
For me, it's definitely old photos. It's always that thought of like, well, what if I want to see this again someday? But with that cat video, he decided to delete it. And that seemed like a really deliberate choice, especially because it was something so sentimental to him. It wasn't about forgetting his cat. It was about choosing to live in the present rather than clinging to a memory. It's a tough thing to do, I think.
It is. And he even gave some practical advice, like the 30-day rule for getting rid of the stuff you don't need. But he also talked about why we hold on to things in the first place, It's often because we're afraid of not having enough in the future. We think that having all these things or these memories makes us feel secure somehow. It's almost like they become part of our identity.
He made a really good point about all the mental clutter that comes with holding on to things that you don't actually use. You have this nagging feeling that they're just sitting there taking up space, and it actually prevents you from enjoying what you have right now.
That's so true. So the main takeaway from that episode is to really focus on the present moment, Don't get too stuck in the past or worry too much about the future. It goes back to that idea of controlling what you can control, which is your experience right now.
All right, so from memories and stuff, we move on to episode 28, Get Nice Things. This one started because he saw a video about a cheap espresso machine that was supposed to be really good. And it got him thinking about, quality versus cost and all that.
Yeah, this episode really gets into that frustration we all feel when we use something that's just like cheap and crappy. He talked about how he used to always go for the cheapest option, but then he'd end up with more problems later on. It's like that saying, penny wise and pound foolish. Has that ever happened to you? Like you tried to save some money, but then it backfired.
Oh, totally. Like those cheap phone chargers that break after a month or those headphones that sound all fuzzy. He gave the example of switching to AirPods and finally being free of those Bluetooth connection problems. Sometimes it's worth it to just spend a little more and avoid those constant annoyances,
Right. But then he also talked about his Lavazza Pod coffee machine. It's pretty cheap, but it works perfectly fine for him. So it's not always about buying the most expensive thing. It's about figuring out what you actually need and what's important to you. You want to find that balance between functionality, quality, and price.
And then there was the whole discussion about sustainability, comparing those cheap electronics that break easily to products that are made to last longer and can be repaired. It makes you think about the impact on the environment when we constantly have to buy new stuff because the old stuff breaks so quickly.
That's a really important point. It might seem cheaper up front, but in the long run, constantly replacing cheap stuff ends up costing more, both for your wallet and for the planet. And Chip's friend's attitude of just use it and throw it away was a good contrast to Chip's own hesitation. So what we can learn from this is to try to prioritize quality and sustainability, but also be realistic. You don't need the absolute best of everything, especially if you're just starting out with something new.
Which, like you said earlier, connects back to that idea of starting with what you have, figuring out what you need, and then upgrading later if it makes sense. Okay, let's move on to episode 29, Don't Get Angry. This one was all about dealing with those little daily annoyances that can drive you crazy, and about anger in general.
Yeah, and this episode gives us a glimpse into how Chip personally deals with anger. He mentioned that he doesn't really get angry at work or in big personal situations, which is interesting.
But what does get to him are those small, everyday inconveniences. Like it starts raining when you're not expecting it, or a car splashes you with water, or you drop your keys. He compared it to like a series of bad coin flips. And it really captures that feeling of like, okay, one more thing and I'm going to lose it. Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, for sure. And I think the important thing is how he deals with that frustration. He acknowledges it, lets himself feel it for a moment, and then he moves on. He even compared it to crying, saying that it's important to let those feelings out, even if it's just a little burst of anger. Holding it in isn't healthy.
And he also mentioned that he gets frustrated when he's playing racket sports, like when his opponent does something that messes up a good point. It's that feeling of like losing control, even when you're doing everything right.
Exactly. So what you can take away from this is that it's okay to feel angry sometimes, but don't let it bottle up inside you. Find a healthy way to express it and then let it go. It's kind of like that idea of letting go from episode 27, but this time it's about letting go of your emotions.
And finally, we have episode 30, one after the other. This one was about breaking down big tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. He used the analogy of lifting weights at the gym, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah, it's such a good analogy. You wouldn't try to lift a super heavy weight all at once, right?
Yeah.
But if you break it down into sets, you can lift the same amount over time. Think about it. How often do you get overwhelmed by a big project and you just don't know where to start?
All the time, like when you have a huge to-do list and it just seems impossible. And Chip applied this idea of sets to everyday tasks, even to building habits. He even talked about how he started his shower podcast this way. He just kept doing it consistently, one episode after another, and it built up into something much bigger.
And he connected it to the Pomodoro technique, which is this method of working in focused bursts with breaks in between. It's another way of breaking down tasks to make them less overwhelming and improve your focus. Do you ever use that technique?
I've tried it a few times, yeah. It definitely helps when I have a lot to get done. And Chip talked about how he used to cram for everything, but that's not really sustainable in the long run. He compared it to how we study in university, where you have a lot of time to focus, versus working life, where you have to be more organized and consistent.
Right. And he gave some practical tips, like how to break down chores into smaller steps, which is really helpful. And he made a great point about how doing easy tasks first can give you a psychological boost. You get that feeling of accomplishment, and it motivates you to keep going. It's like creating a positive cycle.
So, looking back at all 5 episodes, it's amazing how all these seemingly different topics are actually connected. We see that idea of taking control pop up again and again, whether it's about managing fear, dealing with anger, or just getting things done.
Right. And another common thread is the importance of your mindset and how you choose to see things. It affects everything from how you perceive danger to how you value your possessions.
And then there's the practical side of dealing with those daily frustrations, like crappy products or just getting annoyed by little things. And we also saw that incremental progress is so important, achieving big things by taking small steps consistently.
And underlying all of that is this idea of letting go of physical clutter, letting go of past regrets, letting go of anger. It's about creating space, both in your physical world and in your mind.
It's been really interesting to go through these 5 episodes, and seeing how they all connect just shows you how everything in life is related. It makes you think about how these themes are playing out in your own life, right?
Absolutely. And that brings us to a final thought for you. Remember that sets mentality from episode 30, the idea of breaking down big tasks into smaller pieces. Now think about something that you've been wanting to let go of, maybe something from episode 27. It could be physical stuff, a bad habit, or even just a grudge you're holding on to. What if you used that sets approach to let it go? Could you break down the process into small, manageable steps? So instead of trying to do it all at once, you just do a little bit at a time. It might make it seem less overwhelming and easier to actually achieve. It's a great way to combine those insights from Chip's podcast and apply them to your own life. Maybe if you listen to those episodes again with these connections in mind, it'll give you even more ideas.